Hey, Seth David here from the world famous Nerd Enterprises Incorporated, bringing to you another special screencast. This time we're talking about knowledge management, how to get started with Notion. Now, you might have seen my recent series here on firmofthefuture.com on extreme bookmarking, how to manage all of those apps. Most, if not all of these apps, most of them are apps I would put under that general heading of what we call knowledge management, right? Places where you put your knowledge, you have ideas, you learn something, you need to make notes so that you don't forget it, and you put it in some kind of knowledge management app. Some of you might have a physical notebook where you keep and take notes, and if that works for you, great. But for the rest of us, we use apps these days because we want to make sure that we can organize, categorize, and easily reference information that we put into these things. So everything we want to manage, from the to-dos we have for our clients to the shows that we stream on the different networks that we stream them on, right? So from business to personal and everything in between. Now, I've also been sort of wanting a decent, note-taking app. I used to use Evernote for years. I got to the point where I outgrew Evernote, or it outgrew me, or something. I found it clunky. I found it hard to clean it up. Over time, you'll accumulate lots of data in any of these applications, and there's going to come a point in time where you want to do what in this sort of genre of apps we call gardening. Right? You want to be able to take information and store it. You don't want to delete it. You want it there in case you need it, but you want it out of the way, right? You want it all to be manageable. And I found that Evernote didn't give me a really good or easy way to do that, especially once I had accumulated lots and lots of data. So I abandoned Evernote a long time ago. Played around with OneNote. Had all kinds of problems recently, where over the years I used to just have this one Microsoft account forever, but then I ended up being asked to create a different Microsoft account because I wanted one that was associated with my domain. And then somewhere along the way, I ended up with like a third because I think I got confused about whether what I had was a work or school account. And I probably thought it was work or school rather, when it was really work or personal. I have no idea. I get so confused with Microsoft. So recently I was trying to access a notebook I had created in OneNote and couldn't remember which account it was associated with, and thought I had OneNote set up to where I could access all of it. But somehow I'd lost access to the notebooks that were in one of these accounts. And with a fair amount of struggling, I think it took me a good hour, I finally figured it out, got it linked up once again. And then the next thing I thought was, I got to get this information out of here, whatever's important to me, because with what I had just experienced, my big concern was I was going to lose access to it. I was never going to be able to find it at some point permanently. So OneNote failed me. For those reasons. And so I've really been looking for something, and I looked at Notion years ago. There was a time when a lot of people that I know were looking for Evernote alternatives for more than just the reasons I mentioned. There were other things going on with the product. And Notion came up as one that was being sort of pushed as an Evernote alternative, as an Evernote killer, if you will. And I remember looking at it and thinking it was too difficult and hard to figure out. Like I just didn't get it. And so I didn't really pay it too much mind, and I moved on. But more recently, I took a look at Notion. Again, an article showed up in my feed that I read, written by a writer who was using it to do his research for the articles that he would write. And it got me curious, and so I dug into Notion, and very quickly, this time around, I guess I took the time to really start to understand exactly how it works, how things come together, how things are linked. And all of a sudden, I started falling hard and fast in love with this app, and I've been doing more and more with it. It's now an app that I have open every single day, first thing just about, and I'm probably going to switch a lot of processes over to it. I'm already in the process of doing just that. My concern was, I wish I had this article and video a few weeks ago when I got started. So I said, okay, it's not out there, not that I could find, so I'm going to create it. I did do some YouTube searches, and I saw some pretty advanced users doing tours of how they were using it. And I saw all the stuff they were doing, and I was like, this is really cool, but I wish I knew how to do that, how to create that. And one of them even acknowledged in her own video, this is not a tutorial that I'm going to be using to explain to you how to create this. I'm just giving you a tour of how I use it to keep organized. And I get that. So I'm creating that very video and article right now because I know a lot of you who are looking at Notion are wondering, where do I start? And that's one of the challenges, is you literally start with a blank page, and it's just that, and it's hard to know and understand all the stuff that's under the hood and how it all comes together. So I feel like the best thing I can do for you, if you're trying to get started, especially if you're not like me, where you'll be willing to make all kinds of time to play, and you really just need a way to get in and get started, I'm going to give you my exact suggestion for exactly how you can get started, and just go into this knowing that it's very easy to change the way you do things in Notion. That's one of the great things about it, is it has incredible flexibility. The downside of that is, because of that extreme flexibility, because it's built in such a way that you can use it however you want to, that has a way of making it difficult to figure out where and how to get started. So again, I'm going to share my screen with you now and show you exactly how and where you can get started. So looking at my screen, on the left-hand side, about 2/3 of my screen is the desktop app. On the right-hand side, about 1/3 of my screen is the app in the web, right? So one of my wish list items for them is that I wish you could open up multiple windows with the desktop app. You cannot. Obviously, the workaround is that I can go into my browser's bookmarks. You'll notice I'm using Opera, and I can bang out, a series of instances of Notion, and then I can pull these tabs away so that I can be in different parts of it, at the same time effectively, and use the app. And of course, I can pin it right back in there. Okay, so where to start? So on the left, you'll see your workspace, right? Notice the word is singular because this is all one big workspace of yours. Somebody I was talking to earlier today, the day I'm recording this, got confused and thought that they were being billed each time they created another one of these and wanted to collaborate with people. No, you're just being charged for this one whole workspace. If you went to create another account, then that would be a different workspace, right? It would be great if I could rename this, but anyway, here's what I want you to do. When you first start your Notion account, on the left, you'll see some stuff here, some templates. First and foremost, I encourage you to explore those templates, poke around, click and drag. Don't worry, you're not going to break anything, but start learning. That's how I started learning. I got into those templates and started seeing what they did, how they were organized and set up and so on, and just playing with it little by little, slowly at first, then quicker as time went on, I started to get the hang of it. So just create a blank workspace like I just did here, or a blank page. Everything in Notion is a page. So create a blank page within the workspace and call it My Notes About Almost Everything, kind of like what I did to start with. So I'm just creating the title of this note. Since it's a top-level note, it's going to show up here, right? And I can create notes within that if I wanted to. And it's going to be tempting to do something like that. Don't. Not yet, anyway. That'll have its use cases. But first, I want you to understand a lot more about how this stuff works. So when you first create this, you're going to see these kind of options, right? And the thing that caught my eye was the templates. Right. Notice here you can create databases, and it's important to understand that these databases they're linked. They're just different ways of viewing the data that's in the same database. And you're going to see in a couple minutes how this starts to get a lot like Airtable in a lot of ways, right? So when I create a database, if I create a table, then that's going to be one version of it with a view that's defined as a table. But I can basically flip that same data around into a board view, list, calendar, gallery, or timeline, just like you can do in Airtable. But before you get into any of that, because that's already getting a little advanced, just look at the templates. And what I'd like to have you do is use the meeting notes template. That's what I started with. That was the main reason I wanted to start with this, was that so that if I get on a call with a prospect, I can just in 2 seconds pull up a note, take that note, and know that I had a place to put it. So if I click meeting notes here and choose use this template, that's the perfect way to get started on this. Okay. And that's what it does. And notice here, it just creates, the meeting notes. That's going to be here. It's renamed my workspace because I chose that. I can change this back to what I had, right? So I can call this My Notes About Almost Everything. Okay? So I can rename that, but choosing the template made it rename it to the name of the template. And this is a list view. I find the list view kind of limiting, boring, call it what you want. And I clicked on a new row, and so it creates another item in that list. So now I've got 2 untitled notes. Let's delete those. Everything you create is, like I said, it's a page. These are each pages now, and they're each block. So this is a little icon here that you can use to access the options around that page or that block, right? So I'm going to delete that and delete that. And then I want to get a table view. So this is a list view. This, you'll start to get used to these icons, is a board view by meeting type, right? I'm going to add a view, and it's already got table checked off as the choice. So I'm going to call this notes, something like that. I just need to call it something, and that's what's going up here, whatever I named that view, right? Notes. Now I can reorder these, right? So when I click this drop down, I can put this one first, right? I can even call this table of notes, right? Let's just be extremely literal. And now anytime I have a client meeting or I'm on a call with a prospect or anything and I just want to quickly be able to go take notes, this is the perfect way to do it. I can click up here, I can click down here, new page, call notes, ... And when I hit enter, I have a blank page, quite literally, and I can start making my notes. Do this. Remember that, ... There's so much you can do that's under the hood. I can put a table inside of this note by hitting the slash, okay? And if I start typing table, I can give this note its own table, completely separate from the table that we just created. And if I want to move this to the top, I can do that. Maybe this table is going to be a to-do list of the to-do items from this call I just had. Okay. Let me delete this. Okay, this is where and how I want you to get started. Notice what it does here on the left now. Each time I create a different view, they show up here with these little dots so that you know these are views within this table. Okay. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to delete this and show you the one that I've created, because that's exactly how I got started with what you now see here. And I've obviously been adding to it. And eventually I could have kept a descriptor here like type and called it calls, but I decided I wanted calls in its own area, right? So this is where you get to decide when you want to carve something out into its own area. Just keep in mind, this is what I learned, is that as I carve things out into their own areas, they're no longer linked, they're no longer connected, right? So, for example, if you want to start using this for your clients, you'll want to create one top-level area for your clients. And I'm not going to get into this today. I'll just give you kind of a quick preview. I've created what I call the client directory, where each client gets their main page. And then if I click on one of these, it will take you into a whole area that I've created for that client with its own table, and so on and so forth. Again, that's a little advanced. Before you get there, just get used to the idea of working with one main table and adding notes to it. And as you can see, what I've done in mine is I've started to add what they call properties to the table. So the first one, of course, is the name, right? That's your primary, that's the name of the note that you're taking, right? Then I added in a checkbox column where I can indicate when something's done, okay? I have a column for client or entity, a column for type, a column for a URL so that I can attach a URL to the note. Of course, you can also put URLs in the body of the note, date and time, and then the created date, right? It's helpful to know sometimes. And as you can see, it looks like this is somewhat sorted by the created date, although you can see the sort is not turned on. Now, this is one view that I created called Nerd Enterprises Inc. Notice they're all, the same client or entity for Nerd Enterprises Inc. So this is like internal stuff that I'm working on. If I click this drop down, you can see other views I've created. They're all different tables. So they're all table views, but with different filtering and groupings applied, right? So one thing I might do with something like this is if I see that, I've got a bunch of different notes now that accumulate over time and there's different types, I might want to group them. So I'll choose group by, and I'll choose type, okay? And it creates that for me. And then over here, I can choose to hide empty groups. That way it's only showing me groups that actually have something in them, right? And so this could be another way for me to sort of look at what I've got in here. And I can remove the group by simply, in the group by options, choosing none. And that turns it off. And then back up here, I have the all notes view. And you can, again, reorder these. So the all notes view I like to have on top. That's what I like to often start with, and then decide if I want to drill into something, right? Now, each of these, again, is a note. So let's go into this one. Technology this week, right, it's a weekly email I get from Rick Richardson, who's great. And he sends a PDF, so I've just embedded the PDF in this note. It's going to open up in my browser because remember on the left side is the desktop app. And there's the PDF. This is what he sent around. This is issued 8-19, which I think is actually just on this date that I created it, October 24th. There it is, October 24th. So it's a great way to store documents, especially cloud-based documents that I want access to. The URL here will take me straight to the email, right? So I can click that and it pops open, and here's the email that he sent. So, this one took a bit of work. I had to actually download the attachment and drag it over to the note, and then I used Notion's web clipper to add this in, and it asks you where you want to save it to confirm, so it remembers the last place I saved something. So pretty much I can get rid of this extra junk so that doesn't all show up in the title, right? And click Save Page. And now I'm going to have a second version of this in there, which I will, of course, delete. Okay, and what I can do now is to find it quickly, I can sort it. Right now it's sorted by date and time, and then by created. So this one's not going to have a date and time, so it's going to be here. Right? And this one's not going to have the attachment, so that's how I'll know what to delete. So again, you have two assignments to start with, right? Your first assignment is to go create, the new top level page within your workspace and play around with the templates. Use the meeting notes templates like I had, unless you already are clear, that there's a different kind of template you'd want to use. I don't care. Use a template, start adding notes to it, start taking notes in Notion. Okay, then the second assignment, the second thing that I want to have you do is to start adding properties, these kind of columns. Okay, so when I'm looking at this table, again, you have the drop down here to the different views. On the right here at the top, you have the properties. So this is one way to access the properties, and you can add a property, and you can add all different kinds of properties, right? So everything from text, numbers, select, multi-select, and then you can get into some advanced stuff, which I'm going to do in a future video. I'm going to show you how I did one that's got two dates and then a formula to calculate the difference. It calculates the duration. So I have a start time and an end time, and it gives me the difference in minutes, right? So I'm going to delete that property because I didn't actually need it. So that's one way to get at the properties, right? We've already taken a look at the groupings. Here I can filter. So this is now filtered to show me only things where the done checkbox is not checked, right? And so that's a way of filtering out the things that I don't really need, but they're there if I ever do need to go back to them. All I have to do is either change this filter, or remove this filter, or just create another view that doesn't have this filter. Or I could create a view. Let me show you how to do this. Let's create a new view called completed items. Okay, and so we're going to click create completed items. We'll filter, add a filter for where done is checked. So here's all the completed items that I've got in here. So now I have that view. If I want to quickly jump in and see what do I have, what's all in the completed area. Okay, just to dig in a little bit. And one thing I've started to do, I've started already to create kind of habits with this, is I've got a today note. And what that is my way, and you can see it on the right part of my screen in the browser, it's my way of just keeping track of some high-level stuff. Stuff that I want to make sure, like really want to get done today. Notice what's at the top of the list, right? My Notion video, this very video that I'm recording at this very moment. These are sort of backlinks, so you can create links, you can link pages to one another, which is really powerful. This is where this can effectively replace something like the brain, which is a tool that I use that's great for linking different ideas together. Well, I can do that here, and it's got a really good, process for handling that. So here, so here's my today note, and again, this is my way of keeping track of everything, and this is where I've got a date and time. So what happens is each day, right, I need to update this because I'm recording this on November 1st, 2021. Normally what I've been doing is updating this to today. So notice when I click into the calendar, it makes it really a good visual, which is where today's date is. So I'm going to change that. Okay. If I wanted to, let's say there was something on here I wanted to be reminded about, at like 3 p.m. today. So I'm going to click to include a time and type 3 p.m. Okay. And then I'll choose to remind myself this at the time of the event. So what that's going to do is it's going to cause Notion to give me a notification that will essentially link me to this note. It's got a great mobile app, renders beautifully. And again, you can create more properties with more dates, so that you can track different kinds of dates about whatever the thing is that's the subject of your note, right? So I love having the created date because that gives me good context for when this note was created, but then I also want the date of the note itself. If it's a note for a meeting or a call, I want that date, So there's definitely use cases here for having multiple dates. Remember that if I add a property to this note, it's adding those same properties to any notes, in this case, that are in the same database, right? So that's where it starts to come together, that these are all, this is all one big database where I can carve things out and then link them, by creating these different views. So dates are important, something I wanted to be able to kind of deal with right away. Some of you are going to be asking, well, can I use this for task management and can I do recurring dates? The answer is yes, you can use it for task management. The answer is no, you can't do recurring dates. I struggle with this myself because I'm always telling people, like, anytime I've used a productivity app and started using recurring dates, it always ends up making a mess because I get all these instances of this because I either didn't check it off or I don't get the instances because I programmed it to only create the recurrence if I do check it off and I forget to check it off. So much easier to me to just either make a duplicate of something if you want to preserve the original. If you don't care about preserving the original, just change the date. Right? So if you want to start using pages as tasks, which is a great idea, I think, because as you can see, you can put tables and all kinds of other stuff in them, then you can do it. But if you want to deal with recurrences, then as you complete the task, instead of marking it done, you'll simply change the date, right? The other thing is, as you'll see, you might have noticed, if I go in here and click on today, it creates it as a pop-out, which is kind of nice. I can work and focus, but if I really want to focus, then I can choose this option, open it as a page. It fills in the whole screen. You can collapse the menu on the left to get it out of the way. One option I wish I knew about was this, full width. This makes a big difference, gives you a lot more space to work with, right? So there's a lot of stuff that's hidden under the hood that, you'll find as you start playing around. You'll look for things. You'll be like, hey, there's got to be a way to do X. And then you'll just Google it. And sure enough, you'll find something that shows you how to do X, right? The other thing you can do, notice it says I have 3 more properties here. That is because if you go up here and choose Customize Page, you can tell it to hide all the fields that are empty. So hide when empty, it's pretty straightforward. Always hide, right? So when I'm in the task, I'm basically telling it, in this case, to always hide the done. I'm never going to mark this completed, right? Always show the created date. I always want to see that. And the URL, same thing, hide when empty. So if I decide I needed to add a URL to this, I can click to expand that, and I can add whatever URL I think I want to put there, and then I can hide the empty fields again effectively by collapsing that. You can also, of course, put URLs anywhere in a page, and it has a really nice way of rendering, bookmarks when you do paste the URL in. So again, just play with that. There's so much that you can do. There's so much under the hood. Looking at this, if I want to move the pay taxes thing as a priority, I just click and drag. Notice the little blue line. So it makes it really clear where that's going to get dropped when I drop it. Okay. How did I get these columns created? Because you won't see that, and it won't be obvious how to do that by default, is you just take something like this and you drag it far enough to the right until you see a blue line. In this case, the column's already been created, right? But I can do it over here where there's not already columns, and that will create the column. So you just drag it far enough until you see the vertical blue line, and that lets you know that when you drop it, it'll be dropping it in a new column. Hover your mouse ever so slightly, you'll see where it has a column divider. You can resize the column, and if you want to delete it, simply take whatever's in it and drag it back over to the left, and boom, right? So answer yourself this question every day. It's a new habit I'm getting into, is every day I want to answer this question: what will it take to make me happy today? My answer was making this Notion video. Just kind of going through my notes here, seeing what else I wanted to explain to you. I showed you the full width, right? Oh, in these tables, right, by default, it will wrap text. I don't know about you, but this makes me crazy, and especially if you're showing URLs and the URLs are long, like mine are, it just creates these uneven row heights, and that really messes with my OCD. So in the ellipsis menu on the table's options across the top, you can turn that off. It will be on by default, so if you find that's driving you crazy, I wish that was something I knew about. It took me a minute to figure out where that was. and find it. So, once you start playing around and start understanding the features and how this stuff gets laid out, you'll want to play around with your own settings. How did I get dark mode? Right? Go to settings and members. Okay. Go to appearance. And it's pretty much the only option right now under appearance, right? There's also going to be, if you start sharing pages, there's going to be a funny sounding kind of URL that gets associated with those pages, but you can change that. You can set that to be your own domain. So mine I chose was Nerd Enterprises. So now if I go to share this page, let's say, and I turn on the public sharing link, notice it's nerdenterprises.notion.site/ and then it gives you the name of the note, right? So sharing. And once you share something at a certain level, anything beneath that will inherit those sharing properties, so you'd have to go individually and turn sharing off for things if you didn't want them shared with anybody who's got that public sharing link. So just be aware of that, get used to it, learn how these things behave, and just play. That's the key to this, is just play. If you don't have the time, make the time. It will make a huge difference. It's not wasted time. When I say play, it sounds like, oh, that's silly, it's a waste of time. It's not. It's how you'll get into something like this and learn how to save time in the long run. My favorite conversations I've had with people where I can see, because they're sharing their screen with me, what a mess they have on their hands. And I'll say something like, I can show you how you can start organizing this stuff and make things a lot more efficient. And their answer is almost always, I want to, but I don't have time. And the irony of that, the extreme irony of that, is that the whole point is it will free up that time. It will save time. So make the time, carve it out, put a block of time in your calendar and say, during this time, I'm not doing emails, texts, phone calls, any of it. I'm going to play with Notion. I'm going to start playing with adding information into Notion. Force yourself to use it. The next phone call you get, pop open a note in Notion and start taking notes. And then the real playing is not after that. Anybody can take notes on any application. It's more learning what you'll do with the note once you're finished with that call, because now you want to organize it and store it somewhere that you're A, not going to forget about it, and B, be able to find it very easily. Like I said at the beginning, organize, categorize, and easily reference information for the main purpose of reducing stress. Right? That's the whole purpose of this, is to reduce stress by organizing, categorizing, so that you can easily reference information, get access to it when you need it, and not have to independently recall exactly where you put it, because it's in a system of some kind where you just logically know where to go to look for it and find it in 30 seconds or less. My friends, stay productive, stay nerdy. Thank you for watching this. I know it was a long video, but hopefully you got a ton out of it. At the very least, hopefully you got more than enough so that you know exactly how and where to get started using a knowledge management application like Notion.